For decades, whispers of government contact with otherworldly intelligences have haunted the edges of conspiracy theories. But in recent years, something has shifted. Officials, pilots, and intelligence insiders have begun speaking with a new tone. Serious, cautious, yet undeniable. What they describe is not just UFOs in the sky. It is encounters with entities that seem to exist outside our reality itself, interdimensional beings. Joe Rogan, with his trademark curiosity, has given these voices a platform. Again and again on his podcast, he circles back to the question, are we not just being visited from the stars, but from other dimensions of existence? His fascination is obvious. These are not claims made by random enthusiasts. They are whispered by men and women who once held security clearances, who worked in the dark corners of government programs, and who insist that the truth is far stranger than aliens in flying saucers. The story goes like this. Our government has not only detected unidentified craft, but has attempted communication with intelligences connected to them. These are entities that do not behave like life from another planet. They appear and vanish at will, shift shape, and move in ways that defy space and time. If true, this is not just contact with extraterrestrials. It is contact with beings who exist on another layer of reality altogether, and the whispers suggest our government has spoken with them, though what was said remains locked behind classified walls. The guests who sparked the question, the UFO conversation on Rogan's podcast has evolved over time, but a turning point came when his guests began hinting at something beyond aliens. Former intelligence officials, scientists, and even military pilots have carefully chosen their words, often pausing before describing what they had seen or heard. The term interdimensional slips out, followed by a silence heavy with implication. One guest described craft appearing on radar, then vanishing instantly. Not flying away, but blinking out as though they had stepped out of existence. Another spoke of close, range encounters where solid objects seemed to ripple, flickering between forms, as though reality itself could not decide what they were. Rogan, leaning forward, asked the question directly. Are we talking about aliens from another planet, or something else entirely? The answer was always the same, a cautious smile, a refusal to commit, but eyes that said more than words. Perhaps the most chilling moments come when Rogan's guests discuss classified programs. Luis Elizondo, who once directed a Pentagon UFO project, hinted that the phenomenon may not fit into our traditional categories of biology or physics. Others have said that insiders in government already suspect these intelligences are not traveling across the stars, but stepping sideways into our reality. These hints, fragmented and careful, spark the possibility that governments have done more than observe. They may have attempted dialogue. If entities can enter and exit our dimension at will, then surely they have made their presence known to those with the power to respond. Rogan has given these conversations oxygen, and the suggestion is growing stronger. We are not alone, not just in the universe, but in reality itself. The strange nature of the encounters, reports of interdimensional beings differ from traditional alien stories in unsettling ways. Pilots and soldiers have described objects that break every law of physics, moving at thousands of miles per hour, stopping on a dime, then vanishing without a trace. Scientists reviewing the data have admitted that these craft do not appear to operate within our understanding of inertia or propulsion. But the strangest accounts are not about the craft. They are about the encounters with whatever intelligence controls them. Some describe voices heard without sound, impressions pressed into the mind, as though communication came not through words, but directly into thought. Others recall beings that seemed more like shadows than flesh, flickering in and out of vision, as though only partly present in our world. If these accounts are true, then what we are dealing with is not simply extraterrestrial visitors. They may be intelligences that live alongside us in dimensions beyond our senses, capable of stepping into our reality when they choose. Joe Rogan has often compared these reports to stories from shamanic traditions and psychedelic experiences. Entities that speak in riddles, beings that exist outside of time. These are themes as old as human culture. Could it be that what shamans described centuries ago are the same entities modern pilots encounter in the skies? The possibility is chilling. Our government has not only encountered these beings, but has studied them. And if communication has taken place, the question becomes, what was exchanged? The hidden programs. When Rogan's guests hint at classified UFO programs, a darker picture emerges. Whistleblowers have spoken of secret projects where intelligence agencies collect not only data on craft, but attempt to study the intelligences behind them. In some cases, the implication is clear: communication has been attempted and in some form achieved. The public narrative frames UFOs as mysteries, unexplained but harmless. Yet classified reports suggest the government may already know far more. Programs buried under black budgets may hold records of encounters, transcripts of attempted dialogue, and even artifacts linked to these beings. None of it is public. The reason, insiders claim, is control. If these beings are interdimensional, then their very existence challenges the foundation of our reality. Religion, science, and politics would all be shaken. Better, from the government's perspective, to keep the truth hidden until it can be managed. Joe Rogan, with his relentless curiosity, has pressed guests on whether these programs exist. The answers are never direct, but the pauses say everything. Some of his most credible guests have admitted privately that non-human intelligences is the phrase used in official documents. That phrase is not science fiction. It is government language. If the whispers are true, then the most extraordinary secret of all is not simply that UFOs exist. It is that our government has spoken to intelligences that are not from another planet, but from another dimension entirely. What could they want? If governments have spoken to interdimensional beings, then the most haunting question is, what do they want? Accounts from insiders suggest the communications are not clear conversations. They are impressions, warnings, and cryptic exchanges that leave more questions than answers. Some claim the beings offer glimpses of knowledge, mathematics beyond our comprehension, energy systems that bend space itself. Others say the communications are more like riddles, as though testing humanity's ability to understand. There are darker whispers, too. Some insiders believe the beings are not benevolent. They may see us as experiments, resources, or simply curiosities. Encounters often leave witnesses shaken, describing a feeling of being studied rather than greeted. If true, then the beings' motives remain unknown, and perhaps unknowable. Rogan has often voiced both wonder and fear at these possibilities. He imagines what it would mean if humans were insects to these intelligences, barely noticed except when convenient. Or worse, what if we are noticed, but only as subjects of manipulation? The possibility of dialogue does not guarantee friendship. Communication may not mean alliance. And if our government has spoken with these beings, then perhaps they already know something about us we would rather keep hidden. The question is not just whether they exist. It is whether we are ready for what they might say. Echoes in ancient myths, long before radar screens and classified reports, human beings told stories of encounters with otherworldly intelligences. Ancient Sumerian tablets speak of gods descending from the sky with knowledge that shaped civilizations. Indigenous traditions across the Americas describe spirit beings who stepped between worlds. Even in medieval Europe, folklore is filled with tales of shadowy visitors who slipped in and out of our reality. Joe Rogan has often drawn attention to this overlap. How is it that cultures separated by oceans and millennia describe the same kind of entities? Beings who appear suddenly, impart knowledge or fear, and vanish without trace. Could these myths be cultural memories of interdimensional contact, filtered through the language of religion and storytelling? One of his guests once pointed out that the word angel in ancient texts could be reinterpreted not as divine messengers, but as interdimensional intelligences. Demons, jinn, and trickster spirits may be other names for the same phenomenon, beings whose reality bleeds into ours. The suggestion is chilling. If governments have spoken with such beings in modern times, then perhaps humanity has been interacting with them for thousands of years without ever truly understanding who, or what, they are. The myths may not be fantasy. They may be history, written in symbols, warning us that the interdimensional presence is as old as civilization itself. Psychedelics and the DMT connection. One of the strangest links Rogan often explores is the similarity between reports of interdimensional beings and the experiences of people who use powerful psychedelics, especially DMT. Again and again, users describe entering a different realm, one that feels more real than reality itself, and encountering entities. These beings are described as intelligent, aware, and interactive. They appear in many forms, machine-like, insectoid, or humanoid, often communicating through thoughts rather than words. Strikingly, their behavior mirrors the descriptions of UFO occupants and interdimensional visitors from government encounters. Rogan has called this connection too weird to ignore. Could it be that psychedelic visions are not hallucinations, but glimpses into parallel dimensions? Could the chemicals in our brain act as keys, opening doors normally closed to human perception? If so, then shamans throughout history may have been in contact with the same intelligences our government is now studying. Some researchers suggest that the overlap between DMT entities and UFO encounters is no coincidence. Both may involve the same phenomenon, intelligences slipping into our world or humans briefly perceiving theirs. If governments know this, it would explain their deep interest in both UFOs and consciousness research. The idea is staggering. It suggests the barrier between our world and others is thinner than we imagine, and that communication with interdimensional beings may not require spacecraft, but access to altered states of mind. Why governments fear disclosure? If our government has spoken with interdimensional beings, why keep it secret? The answer may lie in fear, not of the beings themselves, but of what the truth would do to humanity. Imagine telling the public that reality is not what it seems, that other dimensions exist and intelligences move freely between them. Such an announcement would shatter science, religion, and philosophy in a single moment. Institutions built on the assumption of a stable reality could collapse. There is also the fear of power imbalance. If interdimensional beings possess knowledge far beyond ours, then whoever controls access to that knowledge controls the future. Governments may not fear the beings as much as they fear rival nations gaining advantage through contact. Keeping everything classified ensures that power remains centralized. Rogan often speculates that disclosure is not about protecting the public. It is about protecting control. The truth may be too disruptive to release in full, so it is kept locked away, revealed only in fragments when it suits political interests. And if the being's motives are not benevolent, then secrecy may be less about control and more about survival. Signs of influence among us. What if interdimensional beings are not just distant visitors, but active participants in human affairs? Some insiders whisper that these intelligences are not only watching, they are influencing. Throughout history, breakthroughs often appear suddenly, as if out of nowhere. Some researchers speculate that certain leaps in technology or culture may have been nudged by intelligences outside our dimension. Others go further, suggesting that conflicts, collapses, and even disasters could be manipulated, guided by forces we barely perceive. Rogan has entertained this possibility on his podcast, drawing comparisons between ancient myths of gods interfering in human lives and modern accounts of shadowy beings observed near UFO hotspots. Could these gods and entities be the same? And if so, what is their agenda? Some theories propose they are shepherding humanity, guiding us towards survival and growth. Others warn they may see us as resources, steering us for their own ends. The unsettling truth is that if interdimensional beings can step into our reality at will, then they may already be here. Not as conquerors in ships, but as hidden influences shaping humanity in ways we cannot detect. A conversation beyond reality. If governments have indeed spoken with interdimensional beings, then the very idea of communication takes on a new meaning. This is not dialogue as we understand it. Witnesses describe exchanges that bypass words entirely, impressions that flood the mind, knowledge transmitted like a download rather than spoken. Some insiders hint that attempts at communication have been ongoing for decades, with varying results. Sometimes the messages are cryptic, offering visions of potential futures. Other times they are direct, warning of dangers we cannot yet see. In every case, the sense is the same: these beings operate on a level of consciousness far beyond our own. Rogan often wonders aloud what such beings would think of us. Do they see us as children, barely aware of reality's deeper layers? Or do they see us as equals in the making, slowly awakening to truths they have always known? The possibility that our government has already asked these questions and received answers changes everything. It means the greatest conversation in history has already begun, but most of humanity has not been invited to hear it. The warnings they may have given, if contact has occurred between our government and interdimensional beings. The question is not only what was said, but what was warned. Several insiders hint that messages received during these encounters were not promises of friendship, but warnings of looming dangers. Some claim the beings offered glimpses of catastrophe, visions of environmental collapse, wars spiraling beyond control, or cosmic events that could devastate Earth. These impressions, relayed not in words but in sudden, overwhelming knowledge, leave witnesses shaken. It is as if the beings are not simply observing humanity, but attempting to steer us away from destruction. Joe Rogan has drawn parallels to ancient prophecies and religious texts that describe beings descending with messages of doom if humanity continues down a reckless path. What if those prophecies were not divine revelations, but echoes of interdimensional contact, stretching back through time? The warnings may not even be for our benefit. Some researchers suggest the beings themselves have stakes in Earth's survival, that our dimension is somehow entangled with theirs. If we destroy our world, the shockwaves could ripple into their own. If true, then the government may already be sitting on knowledge of dangers that affect us all, and the beings' warnings may be less about kindness and more about survival for both species. Secrecy as a shield. Why would governments conceal communication with interdimensional intelligences? Beyond control, one reason may be simple: to shield humanity from truths it cannot yet handle. Imagine waking tomorrow to a press conference where world leaders confirms, "We have spoken with beings from another dimension." Religions would fracture, economies would shudder, and social order might dissolve under the weight of fear and uncertainty. If the beings gave warnings of catastrophe, panic could ripple across nations faster than any government could contain it. This is where secrecy functions not only as control, but as protection. By keeping the dialogue classified, leaders believe they are sparing humanity from chaos. Disclosure, if it comes, will be gradual, fragments released, preparing people step by step. Joe Rogan has often questioned whether secrecy is truly protection or simply manipulation. Are leaders protecting us from panic, or are they protecting their own power by keeping the most extraordinary knowledge in human history locked away? If secrecy is indeed a shield, then it is a fragile one. Because as Rogan often says, the truth has a way of leaking. And once it does, no government will be able to control the flood. The spiritual paradox, one of the most fascinating aspects of Rogan's discussions, is how often the subject drifts from UFOs and government secrecy into spirituality. If interdimensional beings exist, they may not fit neatly into the categories of science or religion. Instead, they straddle both, blurring the lines between technology and mysticism. Guests on Rogan's podcast have noted that encounters with these beings often feel spiritual in nature. Witnesses describe overwhelming feelings of awe, terror, and transcendence. Communication seems less like science fiction and more like a religious vision. Beings appear surrounded by light, delivering cryptic messages that feel like scripture. This paradox raises a chilling possibility: what humanity has called angels, spirits, and gods, throughout history may have been the same interdimensional intelligences encountered by governments today. If true, then our religions are not false. They are reinterpretations of contact, filtered through culture and time. Rogan has often wondered whether religion itself was born from these encounters. And if so, what does it mean that our government may now be speaking to the same intelligences our ancestors worshipped? The weight of hidden dialogue: if governments have spoken to interdimensional beings, then they are holding on to more than classified documents. They are holding the weight of humanity's greatest secret. Think of the implications: our reality is not the full picture. Other dimensions exist, populated by intelligences older, wiser, and more powerful than us. And our leaders know it. Every decision they make, every policy they enforce, would carry the shadow of that knowledge. Joe Rogan often frames it in human terms. How do you wake up every morning and go about politics, wars, and budgets if you know interdimensional beings exist? How do you justify secrecy when the truth belongs to all of humanity? Some insiders suggest that the knowledge itself is a burden. People who have glimpsed the truth through government programs often withdraw, haunted by what they cannot say. The dialogue with these beings is not casual. It is heavy, filled with implications that could redefine existence itself. And yet the silence continues. The weight remains hidden. Until perhaps voices like Rogan's push hard enough to break the wall and let the truth spill into the light. The next step in contact, if whispers are true, and our government has already spoken with interdimensional beings, then the next question is inevitable: what comes next? Contact is rarely a single event. It is a process unfolding over time, each step deeper and more disruptive. Insiders suggest that initial communications may have been limited, fragmented, more like impressions than conversations. But what happens if the dialogue becomes clearer? What if the beings choose to reveal more? The idea that they could provide advanced knowledge, energy systems, medicine, or even insights into consciousness, both excites and terrifies. Joe Rogan has often speculated on this possibility, asking whether humanity is mature enough to handle such information. History suggests we are not. Every major leap in technology, from fire to nuclear power, has been weaponized before it was used for peace. If interdimensional beings offered us knowledge, would it heal our world or destroy it faster? The next step in contact may not be in our control. If these beings exist beyond dimensions, they decide how much to show us, when to appear, and what to say. Governments may try to manage disclosure, but in the end, humanity may be on their timeline, not ours. The shadow over humanity, the possibility of interdimensional contact, casts a long shadow over humanity. If beings exist that can step in and out of our reality at will, then our sense of security is an illusion. Borders mean nothing, weapons mean nothing, and even the laws of physics may not apply to them. This realization is what Joe Rogan calls the fear at the bottom of the rabbit hole. It is not just about UFOs in the sky. It is about the fragility of our place in the cosmos. If governments know this, then their secrecy makes sense. How do you tell 8 billion people that we are vulnerable in ways we cannot defend against? And yet, the shadow may not only be fear. It may also be potential. If these beings see us as more than insects, if they believe we are capable of growth, then perhaps their presence is not a threat but an invitation. The shadow is heavy, but it is also a doorway to a future where humanity is no longer isolated, no longer blind to the deeper structure of reality. For now, we live under that shadow, unsure whether it is the darkness of doom or the outline of a greater dawn. The unfinished conversation. At the heart of this mystery lies a single truth. The conversation has begun, but it is unfinished. Whether whispered through government channels, glimpsed in psychedelic visions, or preserved in ancient myths, humanity has been touched by interdimensional intelligences. The question is not if. It is how far it has already gone. Joe Rogan's fascination reflects the curiosity of millions. We want to know who these beings are, what they want, and what our government has heard from them. We want to know if they come as teachers, watchers, or manipulators. And above all, we want to know why we are being kept in the dark. The unfinished conversation is humanity's greatest story, still unfolding. Perhaps one day the dialogue will be open, undeniable, and shared by all. Until then, it remains a secret, hidden in vaults, whispered by insiders, and explored in conversations like those Rogan hosts. And maybe, just maybe, the beings are waiting. Waiting for us to be ready. Waiting for the moment when the truth will no longer shatter us but transform us. So here we are, left with the most haunting possibility of all. Our government may already have spoken to beings that are not of this world, or even this dimension. If that is true, then history has already changed, even if the truth has been hidden from us. The question is not whether they exist, but why the dialogue remains secret. What was said? What was offered, and what was warned? Joe Rogan's conversations have pulled this mystery into the light, giving us glimpses of a story too big to remain buried forever. Again and again, we hear the same whispers of entities who step through reality, of governments struggling to manage contact, and of knowledge so powerful it could either save us or destroy us. If disclosure ever comes, it will not just be news. It will be the moment humanity realizes it was never alone. The conversation has already begun. The only question is when we will finally be allowed to hear it. Are you ready for that moment?